Back in the summer of 2010, when I was just 21 years old, my best friend and I decided to throw caution to the wind and embrace a season of utter irresponsibility. We chose partying over any semblance of adulting, and as the days grew longer and the nights turned into a blur of revelry, it should come as no surprise that we found ourselves in dire straits by the end of the summer. Our wild and carefree ways had led to both of us being evicted from our respective apartments, leaving us with no choice but to retreat back to the comforting embrace of our parents' homes until we could get our lives back together. One fateful night, my mom's place became our refuge, and we immersed ourselves in the virtual zombie apocalypse of Left 4 Dead, completely oblivious to the late hour. As the clock struck 2 a.m., reality made its presence known, and my friend, Cam, decided it was time to call it a night and return to his mom's place. However, there was one slight problem. He had forgotten to pay his phone bill, leaving him unable to summon a cab on his own. Back in those pre-Uber days, our only option was to dial the cab company directly, and so he borrowed my phone to make the call. Within about 15 minutes, the familiar yellow cab pulled up outside my mom's house, and Cam hopped in, waving me goodbye as he disappeared into the darkness. But little did I know that the night was about to take a sinister turn. Shortly after the cab left, my cell phone rang, and I instinctively answered, recognizing the number as that of the cab company's central station. However, the voice that greeted me on the other end sent icy shivers down my spine. A woman's voice, eerily calm and unsettling, identified herself as Badger Cap and claimed to be calling for Cameron, stating that his cab had arrived. Confused and thinking it might be a simple mix-up, I informed her that my friend had already departed at least 10 minutes ago. Peering out of the window, I could still see a car idling on the street, its brake lights casting a faint glow in the darkness. Assuming it was another cab dispatched in error, I tried to brush off the strange call. But the woman's voice persisted, repeating her request for Cam to come outside and get in the cab. Her words now carried an edge of impatience, as if she hadn't heard my response. The atmosphere grew tense, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. It was like her voice was trapped in a maze of echoes, bouncing around a fog-drenched void, and I couldn't pinpoint why it was unsettling me so deeply. In an attempt to reassure myself, I reiterated that Cam had already been picked up, but this only seemed to intensify the woman's insistence. Then, inexplicably, the call was interrupted by peculiar noises, as though the wind were howling into the microphone. And suddenly, the line went dead. Fear began to gnaw at me, and my heart pounded in my chest. Without wasting a moment, I called the cab company back, and this time, a man answered. My voice shaky, I recounted the unnerving experience and informed him that they might have mistakenly sent 2 cabs to my location. To my relief, he assured me that there were no female cab drivers on duty that night, and he confirmed that Cam had indeed been picked up earlier by one of their drivers. Yet, despite this confirmation, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong. The dispatcher and I pondered the possibilities together, trying to make sense of the strange encounter. Perhaps, we speculated, someone had managed to spoof the cab company's phone number, a disconcerting thought in itself. But why would someone go to such lengths to lure a customer into their car? And more importantly, how did this mysterious woman know that Cameron had called for a cab using my phone? As Cam finally arrived safely at his mom's place, he wasted no time calling me on the landline to discuss what had transpired. Given his history with a relentless stalker, he couldn't help but wonder if this unsettling incident was somehow connected. He had dealt with this tormentor for several years, even going so far as to obtain a restraining order due to her disturbing and invasive behavior, such as following him and breaking into his apartment. Yet, even with his theory in mind, we found it difficult to believe that the stalker could have known about Cam's cab call and where I was living with my mom. We were tucked away in a quiet suburban area on the outskirts of town, far from prying eyes, and my mom had a different last name than I did, making it unlikely for her to have easily found our address online. So, though it seemed like the most logical explanation, it left us still grappling with questions and unease. As the days turned into weeks, the unsettling encounter faded into memory, but the mystery lingered. We had no choice but to accept that sometimes inexplicable things happen, and until a better theory emerged, we were left to ponder the enigmatic events of that summer night. In the midst of the bustling metropolis I call home, my daily life has been shaped by a confluence of events. Ongoing car troubles and the omnipresent pandemic have conspired to keep me away from the roads, leading me to depend increasingly on delivery apps for my culinary needs. The convenience and ease of ordering through such apps seemed like a solace in these uncertain times. Little did I know that a seemingly routine experience would spiral into a surreal and distressing ordeal. One ordinary day, around the lunch hour, I found myself immersed in domestic chores, cleaning and tidying up my living space. As my appetite began to awaken, I contemplated my lunch options and ultimately settled on Uber Eats. A delightful meal from a nearby restaurant sounded perfect, and I placed my order with enthusiasm. Having completed the order, I decided to enjoy a little entertainment while waiting for my meal to arrive. Minutes passed, and within a short span, the app indicated that a driver named Anthony had accepted my order. I noticed that Anthony was listed as a bike rider, and to my surprise, lacked both a profile picture and any previous delivery records. Despite this peculiarity, I initially brushed it off, imagining that I might be one of the first customers for this new driver. In a somewhat amused fashion, I watched the app's map, anticipating my meal's journey to my doorstep. Time, however, kept ticking away with no indication of movement from Anthony. A full half-hour elapsed, and I began to grow concerned. Pondering whether there was a technical glitch or some mishap befalling the driver, I decided to reach out to Uber Eats support via the chat option. A helpful representative responded, and I explained the situation, leading them to assign a new driver for my order. An odd occurrence, but I didn't think much of it at the time. The second driver's name was Lori, and curiously, their profile mirrored that of Anthony's, an unknown bike rider without a profile picture or any delivery history. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, I allowed an additional 20 minutes to pass, expecting the best but prepared for the worst. I tried reaching out to Lori through messages, seeking to establish some communication and inquire about any possible issues. Regrettably, there was no response from Lori. Amidst growing perplexity and hunger, I kept checking the Uber Eats app, wondering if the platform was experiencing difficulties. The situation took a disconcerting turn when, at this point, I decided to contact support once more for further assistance. They assured me that they would reassign the driver and apologized for the inconvenience. However, what unfolded next was beyond any rational explanation. The third driver, like a repeating glitch in the system, turned out to be another bike rider named Robert. And just like his predecessors, Robert possessed the exact same mysterious attributes: a lack of profile picture, zero delivery history, and an inexplicable sense of uncertainty. Frustrated and bewildered, I contemplated canceling the order altogether, unwilling to endure this bizarre dance of drivers any longer. But before I could make my decision, an unexpected message popped up from Robert. "Hello, have your food. What's your phone number?" The message read. Bewildered and somewhat alarmed, I replied promptly, declining to share my personal information and suggesting that we communicate through the app. Instead of acknowledging my message or reassuring me, Robert persisted, asking for my number again and inquiring about my age. The tone of the conversation took an unsettling turn, and alarm bells started ringing in my head. Summoning every ounce of courage, I contacted Uber Eats support yet again, urgently requesting their intervention to cancel the order and protect my privacy. The situation demanded immediate attention, and the support representative was attentive and understanding, assuring me that they would resolve the matter promptly. They canceled the order, and I was promised a refund for the inconvenience. Despite this relief, my anxiety wasn't fully quelled. At that very moment, as I was on the phone with Uber Eats safety team, an eerie voice emanated from outside my door. "Miss Jonah, I have your food," it whispered. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and chills ran down my spine. How did this stranger know my name? I glanced towards the entrance, where a heavy door separated me from the unsettling presence outside. Frightened, I relayed the situation to the safety woman on the line, who listened intently and urged me to take caution. I peeked through the metal screen door, and there he was, a man with an unsettling demeanor and a cold, eerie stare. He appeared to be fuming, his expression transforming from an unsettling smile to one of anger upon spotting me on the phone. Driven by fear, I pleaded with the man to leave, as his unsettling presence was suffocating my sense of safety. Yet he seemed undeterred, persistently demanding to know who I was speaking to on the phone. As his aggression escalated, he began pounding on my door and forcefully gripping the doorknob, as if attempting to force his way inside. Shivering with trepidation, I locked the heavy door, which provided some sense of protection, but he continued his belligerent behavior. The Uber Eats safety woman remained on the line, desperately trying to ensure my well-being and suggesting that I call the police immediately. Panic gripped me, and my heart pounded as I reached for my phone to dial the authorities. As I spoke with the police, the man's agitation showed no signs of waning. He loitered in front of my house for what felt like an eternity, as my concerned neighbor recounted witnessing the man's troubling behavior. Apparently, he had retreated to a truck parked nearby, accompanied by another individual. The two men remained suspiciously stationed, watching passersby and exuding an aura of malevolence. Gathering her courage, my neighbor provided a detailed description of both the vehicle and the man's appearance to aid the police investigation. The situation was surreal and alarming, shaking the foundation of my sense of security within my own home. I felt compelled to share this unnerving experience in hopes of finding support, reassurance, or even someone else who may have encountered something similar. The lingering unease and fear from that incident have left me scared, and I am now wary of engaging with delivery apps for the foreseeable future. To the enigmatic Uber Eats driver who solicited my personal information and attempted to breach my sanctuary, I implore you to never cross paths with me again, for the memory of that day continues to haunt me. In the year 2018, an adventurous spirit gripped me and three of my closest friends, prompting us to embark on an unforgettable journey to the mesmerizing island of Bali. The allure of this enchanting destination, coupled with its budget-friendly appeal and the luxury of time on our side, made it an irresistible choice for our week-long escapade. Our carefully planned itinerary was a delightful blend of sightseeing, immersing ourselves in the richness of local cuisine, conquering the towering peaks in mountain climbing adventures, and delighting in the vibrant ambience of beachside bars. It was the quintessential Indonesian vacation, promising us a memorable experience. And memorable it was. Bali's awe-inspiring beauty left us utterly spellbound, and the local food offerings tantalized our taste buds like never before. Each bite was a culinary revelation, filling our senses with a plethora of delightful flavors and aromas that we had never encountered back home. From the mouth-watering satay to the exotic rendang and the refreshing sweetness of fresh tropical fruits, every meal was a gastronomic adventure on its own. Yet, amid this paradise, we couldn't escape the stark reality of a growing issue: the prominence of drugs among the local population. Mushrooms, in particular, seemed to be a popular vice, and we often found ourselves approached by individuals eager to peddle their illicit wares. As we wandered the streets, it seemed as though the shadows whispered tales of their clandestine dealings. One encounter was particularly memorable, as an enthusiastic man tried to lure me with a dubious 2-for-1 deal for a transcendent experience to meet our Lord and Savior Jesus. My friends laughed off his offer, playfully urging me to consider the spiritual encounter, but I declined, knowing well the dangers of succumbing to such temptations. Despite these occasional unsettling encounters, we remained confident in our ability to navigate such situations, partly because some of these individuals seemed to be under the influence themselves. We hoped that our vigilance and collective strength as a group would keep us safe throughout the trip. However, the true horror of our otherwise enjoyable vacation unfolded on the very last night of our stay. As we returned to our humble erm abode, an inexplicable sense of unease crept over us. The affordable price had necessitated a compromise in security, as the place lacked a proper locking mechanism for the door. In place of conventional locks, 2 wooden doors swung inwards, and the only way to secure them was by wedging a primitive wooden block through the holes mounted on the doors. It was far from ideal, but we had managed well for 6 days without any trouble. On that ominous night, though, our sense of safety was shattered when we discovered the wooden block missing. Our diligent search efforts proved fruitless, and we resorted to using a makeshift solution, the selfie stick, as a feeble attempt to wedge the doors close. Naive in our optimism, we retired to our beds, hoping for an uneventful night's sleep before the journey back home. But fate had other plans. In the dead of night, I was jolted awake by peculiar clicking sounds emanating from the direction of the door. My initial assumption was that one of my friends was awake, engaging in some late-night activity. Curiosity drove me to investigate, and as I drew closer to the door, a cold shiver of trepidation coursed through my veins. The doors were slightly ajar, and the deformed selfie stick revealed signs of tampering. My heart pounding, I peered outside and witnessed a chilling sight. 3 shadowy figures peering through the gap between the doors, their intentions nefarious and obscure. They were dangerously close to entering, desperately trying to push the doors open. In a moment of instinctive bravery, I confronted the intruders, demanding to know their purpose. One of them held the wooden block we had lost, further deepening the mystery. They tried to explain that they had found it outside our erm, but their flimsy excuse fell flat. Summoning my friends, we united against this unnerving intrusion, and the perpetrators fled into the shadows of the night. Fear and adrenaline coursed through our veins as we remained vigilant, fearing a possible return of these unwanted visitors. With the first light of dawn, we mustered the courage to report the incident to the reception, only to be confronted by an even more unsettling revelation. The description I provided of the supposed cleaner hired by the errand did not align with any of the female employees they had on staff. The realization that we had unknowingly permitted an impostor into our sanctuary during our absence sent shivers down our spines. Who was this individual? What sinister motive had brought them to our door at such an unholy hour? The questions echoed in our minds, and we couldn't help but feel a deep sense of vulnerability and invasion. Thankfully, we were fortunate that nothing of significant value was stolen, and most importantly, we emerged unscathed from this nightmarish encounter. We couldn't help but wonder what would have transpired if I hadn't awoken on that fateful night. It was a chilling reminder of how a seemingly routine adventure could swiftly morph into a perilous ordeal. As our time in Bali drew to a close, we bid farewell to the island, haunted by both its beauty and the eerie encounter that had marred our otherwise cherished memories. This extraordinary journey had taught us that even in the most idyllic of settings, we must remain vigilant and cautious, for danger can lurk in the shadows, ready to pounce when least expected. Approximately a decade ago, in what must have been my 27th year, I found myself entangled in a harrowing and unsettling experience. At that time, I was in a relationship with a musician who was part of a band. Our living situation was rather unique. We resided in a converted garage located on a service lane, a street that accommodated businesses and had houses at its rear. The life of a musician often meant erratic schedules, and my partner had returned home in the wee hours of the morning, seeking some much-needed rest. Meanwhile, his bandmate was temporarily living in a parked bus nearby, where they stored their musical equipment. One morning, around 5 a.m., I was startled awake by blood-curdling screams echoing through the otherwise quiet streets. The anguished cries belonged to a woman, and she was accompanied by a man whose voice was laced with aggression, repeatedly threatening her life. The neighborhood we resided in was far from the most pleasant. However, it had its own charm. Presently, the area had transformed into a highly sought-after locality, brimming with boutique shops and close to the beach. But back then, the house from which the terrifying sounds emanated seemed condemned, presenting an eerie sight with its two-story structure falling into disrepair, tattered curtains, and rotting wood. To add to the scene's haunting aura, several broken-down cars were scattered on the property, appearing as if they had been picked apart by scavengers. Little did I know that someone was actually residing in that dilapidated dwelling. Summoning my courage, I approached the front door and gazed outside, only to witness a distressing sight. Across the street, a man with a formidable presence donned a full leather jacket, matching pants, and sturdy boots. His face was half adorned with a tattoo of the name Tomoko, and his demeanor indicated that he was under the influence of some mind-altering substance. The whites of his eyes were alarmingly visible, accentuating his rage and mania. He continued his menacing pursuit of a terrified lady dressed in pajamas, whom I assumed he had targeted earlier. Reacting instinctively, my vocal cords acted independently, and I shouted, "Oi! What in the world is going on? I'm calling the police." The confrontation between the raging man and the frightened woman momentarily ceased as they both turned to look at me standing near my door, clad in nothing but my pajamas and a flamboyant leopard print robe, my feet bare against the cool ground. In the face of danger, I hesitated not. I swiftly dialed the emergency number, reporting the volatile situation as it unfolded before my eyes. My bravery, however, was not bolstered by physical might. Standing at 5 feet 10 inches and weighing approximately 80 kilograms, I was aware that the man could overpower me with ease. Nonetheless, driven by an innate sense of justice and a desire to protect the vulnerable, I seized a substantial plank of 2x4, which I had prudently kept behind my door. With the police on the line, I marched outside, my heart racing with fear and determination, the wooden plank resting over my shoulder. The gravity of the situation did not escape me, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins fueled my resolve to aid the woman in distress. Yet, my actions drew no immediate support from the others I shared the space with. Astonishingly, neither my partner nor his bandmate in the bus stirred from their slumber, leaving me feeling a mix of anger and frustration at their inaction. Undeterred, I was soon joined by another woman from across the road, who, like me, could not bear the thought of standing idly by while someone's life was being threatened. We exchanged brief words, both lamenting the lack of courage displayed by our male counterparts. It was disheartening to witness the apathy displayed by those who should have stood up to protect their community. Several days later, a woman approached me at my residence, her eyes expressing a deep sense of gratitude. She thanked me profusely for my intervention, explaining that the man who had caused such terror was no ordinary individual. He was a deranged and addicted soul who had developed an infatuation with her niece. Ignoring all boundaries and pleas for him to leave her alone, he forced himself into her life, seeking solace where none was welcome. In a fit of enraged desperation, he subjected her to a vicious assault, chasing her through the streets in a tormenting display of violence. Relieved that my actions had at least temporarily abated the danger, I was eventually informed that the man had been apprehended by the authorities, who took him away in handcuffs. The image of his arrest, with a lit cigarette dangling from his mouth, served as a small comfort in the knowledge that he could no longer inflict harm on others. Though the nightmare had seemingly passed, the memory lingered, etching itself into the recesses of my mind. The fear of a potential return weighed heavily on me during moments of solitude, as I pondered the fragility of safety and the unsettling reality that courage and resolve could sometimes be scarce commodities in the face of adversity.